From abandoned nuclear facilities to secret tunnels under cities and some expensive military infrastructure, here are 10 abandoned and secret technologies. Number 10. Camp Century. Camp Century was a secret nuclear research facility first constructed by the United States military between 1959 and 1960. It was constructed deep beneath the Greenland ice cap. While this secret nuclear facility was labeled as a base for scientific research, the facility was actually part of an extremely secret project known as Project Iceworm, and it was actually designed to keep nukes in storage in case of a necessary nuclear strike against the U.S.S.R. due to all-out conflict. At the time, this project cost the government about $7.9 million, which equals $69 million in today's money. It consisted of at least 21 tunnels that spanned a whopping 1.9 miles. However, no nuclear missiles ended up being launched from this facility. As we all know, the Cold War ended and there was no nuclear disaster, thank goodness. Now we have other things to worry about. The site was abandoned in 1966 after Denmark protested its existence, and experts realized the ice in which the facility was built was far less stable than first believed. However, toxic waste still remains at the site today, which is worrying as the ice could melt and leak nuclear toxic waste into the ocean. Great. Number 9. Cincinnati Subway. One of the biggest secret technologies in Cincinnati is right beneath everybody's feet, as reported by The Verge. Most people who live in Cincinnati probably don't have any clue that there's an entire subway system beneath the city streets. The Cincinnati subway system is America's most extensively abandoned metro. This subway project was a massive failure. The construction commenced with high hopes in the early 1900s. There were over 2 miles of tunnels built along 4 major stations before the costs of the metro forced the leaders in the city to abandon the project in 1924, leaving Cincinnati without the subway it deserves. This is just another doomed mega project that could have helped boost America's infrastructure. Instead, it ended up robbing Cincinnati of millions of dollars, about $305 million in today's money. And now, it's just a bunch of filthy, abandoned tunnels filled with graffiti and probably 1 or 2 dead bodies. Though that is absolutely conjecture. There have been proposals to reuse the tunnels and try to make something of the abandoned metro, but nothing has ever come to fruition. The only good thing about the Cincinnati subway station is that it lures urban explorers from all over the country to explore its winding and decrepit passageways. And now for a mega station in Chicago. But first, be sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what place you'd like to explore in the comments below. Number 8. The Chicago Mega Station. Another abandoned and poorly thought out infrastructure project is home in Chicago. You might remember this huge bungle from just a few years ago. It happened when the city of Chicago decided to bury roughly $400 million of taxpayer money into something known as the Block 37 CTA Superstation. Constructed in the very center of downtown, the city pressed ahead with the construction even though there was absolutely no guarantee that the station would ever be used. At the time, it had been proposed by Elon Musk's The Boring Company, and it was intended as a futuristic airport link between O'Hare Airport and the city center. While the Block 37 Superstation may not be that technologically impressive, it still remains abandoned today as a wasted attempt at infrastructure. Work began in 2005 and then was halted in 2011. The superstation is still unfinished. It serves absolutely no purpose and it wasted nearly $500 million of taxpayer money in the city of Chicago. Maybe one day it'll be turned into an amazing superstation, but for now, it's just an abandoned construction site with absolutely no use to anyone. Number 7. China's unused plutonium. If you thought America has a way of messing up infrastructure projects and basically throwing money down the drain, take a look at China. Specifically, take a look at their $883 million nuclear military facility. This facility lurks beneath the Sichuan Mountains in China, where the largest artificial tunnel and the largest artificial cave structure on the planet are located. That's right, China owns the largest artificial tunnel in the world. It took tens of thousands of workers to build this monstrosity of engineering, and they had to do it in the most horrendous conditions imaginable. The network of tunnels spans an astounding 14 miles, with their artificial caves measuring more than 1 million square feet in total. This subterranean complex beneath the mountains boasts an incredible 13 levels. It would make the dwarves of Middle-earth jealous. But inside this huge underground complex is a top-secret nuclear military plant. It had been commissioned by the Chinese government at the height of the Cold War in the 1960s. Inside the superstructure is a nuclear plant able to produce weapons-grade plutonium. You know, that stuff from the movies. but the project only ever reached 85% of its completion. The Cold War became not so cold in the 1980s, and the project was cancelled. Today, visitors can view this abandoned piece of technology as a tourist attraction. Number 6. The Underground Nazi City. The Nazis were basically a bunch of ants scurrying around trying to build the most impressive technology of the 1940s. They were all over the world. They were developing weapons, they were building impressive facilities, and they were trying to build the largest underground city in the world. This was in 1943 when the Nazis basically realized they were not going to win any wars ever again. They started in April of 1943, shrouded in complete secrecy. The project was known as Project Riese, which is the German word for giant. The construction involved 7 underground complexes, all connected by around 5.5 miles of tunnels. This was done under the Owl Mountains in what is now Poland. This was some half-baked idea as the war turned against the Nazis. It took thousands of prisoners of war just to start on the mega project. This included children and other forced labor slaves. At the time, the construction costs would have been around $60 million. The construction went on for about 2 years until May 1945, and we all know what happened in 1945. Most historians believe that the subterranean city would have been used either as a personal bunker for Hitler, a massive military base, or as a way for Hitler and his most trusted staff to escape and live the rest of their lives underground as moles. Nobody really knows the truth. Number 5. The Maginot Line. The Maginot Line is a series of semi-subterranean concrete fortresses all connected through an underground railway. According to history, the border fortress was constructed in the 1930s as a method to prevent a German invasion of France. The name of the line was given after André Maginot, who was the French Minister of War during that time. France had already been invaded during World War I, and they were hoping to avoid it if another war with Germany was to break out. Of course, the Maginot Line didn't work. It also wasted about $3.7 billion in today's currency. Despite the impressive series of concrete fortresses, France was still invaded in May of 1940. The thing was that France's border with Luxembourg, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany all had robust defenses. But the border with Belgium had basically no protection. This is how the Nazis ended up invading France in 1940. They snuck in through the France-Belgian border. The Maginot Line was rendered useless soon after World War II and was effectively abandoned sometime during the 1960s. One of the biggest issues was that the technology had improved so much between World War I and World War II, then tenfold into the 1950s and 60s, and such fortification just didn't make sense anymore. Number 4. Norwegian Naval Base. The Norwegian naval base of Olausvern was built in the late 1960s and cost roughly $500 million at the time, roughly $3.8 billion in today's currency. This incredible naval base was literally carved into the side of the mountain like something from a James Bond movie. There was absolutely no expense spared when constructing the base, filling it with the most advanced technology money could buy at the time. The mountain ended up being filled with tunnels and rooms over a period of 30 years. The point of the base was to act as a service facility for NATO submarines that were operating in the seas around Norway. However, with the fall of communism, the mountain naval base lost its strategic importance. The base ended up being deactivated in 2002 and eventually closed in 2008. But here's what makes this story of abandoned technology so hilarious and slightly ironic. You see, in 2011, this impressive naval base was sold to a consortium of Norwegian oil companies, and it has since been rented by affiliates of a Russian energy giant that has links to the Kremlin. So, after so much money and so much hard work making this base into a point of defense against communism, it's now being rented by one of the only communist countries left on Earth. Number 3. The Doomed Supercollider. Stepping away from old and abandoned military technology, let's take a look at the superconducting supercollider, known as the SSC, also known as the Deserton. Most people are familiar with the supercollider in Switzerland that recently discovered the Higgs boson God particle. Well, it could have been discovered by the superconducting supercollider in Texas. It would have been America's only particle collider, and it would have been able to rival the one built at the European Organization for Nuclear Research. According to Wired, the project was first proposed in 1976, and construction actually began 4 years later. However, as with everything that starts being made in America, costs got out of control and the project was canceled before it was ever finished. This seems completely insane considering the mega project had already sank about 4.3 billion of today's US dollars. A few more years and a few more dollars and the United States would have had their own superconducting supercollider. However, now all that's left is an abandoned technology half-developed that can't do any kind of supercolliding. It can't even make you a slice of toast. Number 2. North Dakota Safeguard Complex. Located in Tacoma, North Dakota is the abandoned remnants of one of the biggest wastes of money ever. In fact, the Stanley R. Mickelson Safeguard Complex is a bewildering waste of taxpayer money. It was completed in April of 1975 at a cost of roughly $6 billion. The complex was top of the line, built beneath a bizarre pyramid structure and designed to provide launch and control for both short-range and long-range anti-ballistic missiles. But here's the kicker. This $6 billion complex was only fully operational for 24 hours. Immediately after it was finished being built, Congress deemed the base ineffective and completely pulled the plug on the whole operation. This was literally a day after it went to full operational capacity. To make this story even more ridiculous, the base was sold in 2012 for a tiny fraction of what it cost to make to a religious group. So far as we know, the base is now abandoned and falling into disrepair. Number 1. The most expensive abandoned technology. Let me introduce you to one of Europe's largest military facilities, now completely abandoned and useless. The Zeljawa Air Base was constructed by the Yugoslav armed forces between the 1940s and the 1960s. It was constructed under a mountain at a secret location, though not so secret anymore, on what is now the border of Croatia and Bosnia. The advanced military facility served as a command center and could warn against any possible nuclear strikes. The base could even withstand a direct hit from a nuclear warhead. It took about $6 billion to build the base back at the time, which equals an unbelievable $48.7 billion of today's currency. It was only operational until the beginning of the 1990s. It was eventually destroyed by the Yugoslav People's Army in the Yugoslav Wars of 1991. Ever since then, the immense and once secret structure has remained abandoned. Which of these abandoned technologies would you love to explore? Tell me in the comments below, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another amazing video.